Buffalo, the Queen City of the Lakes, is steeped in maritime lore, and much of its nautical history is being preserved by a group of dedicated persons from all walks of life, making up the Lower Lakes Marine Historical Society. The center and a 4,000 square foot facility at the rear of Buffalo's once world-renowned Pierce Aero Plant on Elmwood Avenue has been donated by the family who own the Rupp Rental Equipment Company. Buffalo attorney Mike McCarthy is president.
We don't have a museum setting, really. We have some artifacts on display. Mostly at this stage, what we have are people that are interested in researching, because we have an extensive library, we have an extensive collection of documents and photos, and we have the people available to tell them what we have here. So at this stage of our existence, it's more a small operation of that nature.
Okay, membership. What do we know about membership?
Everybody's invited. Our board of directors and membership constitute a cross-section of our community. The membership is relatively inexpensive. It's $25 a year. You get discounts on whatever we sell, and you get newsletter and the opportunity to meet with other people of a similar interest.
We're going to take a little walking tour, and then we're going to look at some old photos. Sure. Some of the things we may see here was a binnacle. What was that we saw?
Oh, that's the Liberty ships, which were built, especially during World War I, needed a place to mount the compass, and it's called a binnacle. And they recruited a corporation not known for nautical things, the Lionel Corporation, which built, of course, model trains. And you'll see that it's basically wooden, but then has a big brass dome on it. It's very pretty.
And there's a steamship over there, one of the early steamships. What was that?
Yes, that was an American steamship boat. That's the Frank Goodyear. And that was later converted into a self-unloader called the Diamond Alkali, and that is from a member who was the attorney for American Steamship at the time.
And are those two objects on the floor some type of a whistle that you talked about? What are they?
One is from a freighter, the other one is from a tugboat. And before radio and before, in the old days, they actually talked to each other through the use of the whistle. And on summer nights in the heart of the city, you could hear the tugs and the boats talking to one another.
What are some of the displays we're going to see in under glass? Say the first one, for example.
Well, we have the Parsons Weaver collection. That's a collection of a Buffalo family. It includes diaries and correspondence and artifacts from a Buffalo family from down in the South Buffalo First Ward area. And it's very poignant in the sense that you see a window into the lives of some people who were actually working in the boats in those days and how they wrote and talked to their families. It's a great collection.
And over on the other side?
Well, we have early boat building implements, anything from a caulking iron to a brace and bit to wooden mallets. And then down farther we have some other displays which include some artifacts from the pleasure craft that plied our waters in the old days.
When you say boat building, we were quite a boat building center here, weren't we?
Yes, we were.
Some of the ships and boats that we may have built here in Buffalo.
There's a site on Ganson Street which no longer builds boats, but it had boat building there from 1830 to 1962 under various names: Bidwell and Banta, Union Dry Dock, Buffalo Dry Dock, American Shipbuilding, the Canadiana, the Americana were built there, many wooden schooners. There are boats that are famous to Buffalo that were here for many years, such as the Grattan, now the Cotter. Its sister ships, the Potter and the Hutchinson, which were Buffalo fireboats, may or may not exist. We're not terribly sure. We think the Potter may still exist.
I'm going to take a look at some of your photographs now, and maybe you could just give us a brief outline of what was happening.
Sure, I'd be happy to show you. This is a shot of the winter grain fleet, and on the back of the photo it indicates it's from November 8th, 1934. And they used to store grain in ships and tie them up behind the break wall, and that's what you're seeing there. This is from our 1870 pond collection. It's taken from the top of Old City Hall, which is today now County Hall. In the foreground you see St. Joseph's School, which was at the corner of Church and Delaware. Of course, it no longer exists. In the background and slightly to the west is the Baker Brothers Boatyard, which built canal boats. And then slightly to the south of that is Charles Street. It's interesting that today, just to the south of Charles Street, is the construction of the new headquarters and studios for Channel 17. If you look up to the top of the photo, you'll see the South Pier of the harbor, which contains the 1833 lighthouse. And for those that don't recognize it, today that land behind it is all filled in, and it's the Coast Guard base. But this is the way it looked in 1870. Around 1834, the state of New York sponsored the building of a seawall, which you can see in the background off the left corner of the bathhouse here. And the idea was to keep the lake from inundating the inner harbor, and it became a perfect place for squatters to build their shacks. This was, of course, not a shack, but the bathhouse. This area today is along the Furman Boulevard area. This is a photo taken in 1939. The reason we know that is the license plates on the vehicles indicate it's the World's Fair year, and those are obviously, therefore, 39 Chryslers. The people are probably mechanics and salesmen from the various local dealerships come to pick up the new cars that have just been dropped off in Detroit. As you move up into the picture, you'll see the stern of the Canadiana. We used this in a book and called it Beauty and the Beast to indicate that these beautiful automobiles eventually killed off the Canadiana and the other excursion boats because they were no longer needed to get to Crystal. This is a shot of Crystal Beach in the late 30s, early 40s, showing the bathers in their wool bathing suits and the pier, and of course the venerable Canadiana at the end of the pier. Unlike the other photo we showed you of Crystal Beach with the boat at the pier, this is much earlier. This is 1912, and what you see is the steamer Americana, the earlier built sister ship of the Canadiana. This is a 1912 shot of the Erie Beach complex, and it shows the dance hall pavilion, and in the background you may just see the edges of the breakwater that defined the largest outdoor swimming pool in the world at the time, which was basically a concrete border around a portion of the lake, but a very popular place for Buffalonians to go in the turn of the century. Well, since this photo has its name on it, it's fairly obvious what it is. It's the canal going down the west side, where today you would find the Niagara Thruway. To the right, you'll see the burned remains of the Shelkoff Tanning Factory, and immediately adjacent and behind that are the walls of the Erie County Penitentiary, which was at that time located in that site, which is around the foot of Pennsylvania Street. The reason we chose this photo is to show one of the overnight boats that sailed between Buffalo and Cleveland and Detroit. It's a big, big side-wheeler, and these were the palaces of the lakes that many generations enjoyed.
Do you foresee that happening again on our lakes? People talk about it, people would like it, but yet is it feasible?
For a number of reasons, it probably isn't. The requirement that the hulls be built in the United States means that that's an expense in itself, but the crewing cost today of having union seamen operate these types of boats probably makes it prohibitive. It's a shame, but I think that's probably the case.
What else do you have on the premises besides this display room and the offices?
Well, the heart of what we have here is the research materials, and that basically consists of about 150 to 200,000 photos and negatives that are Buffalo related and mostly maritime.
Well, we're seeing a recreation of early Buffalo. How about Canal Street? You got some photos of Canal Street?
We have a few photos. We have a lot of research material.
Guess it was a tough street. They call it the Hooks, didn't they?
They called it the Hooks. They called it Hell's Half Acre. They called it the infected district. They said that next to Shanghai or the Barbary Coast, it was probably the roughest couple acres in the world. And yeah, the trapdoors and the bodies going into the canal. We have all those stories.
Mike, I want to thank you very much for a most interesting tour, and wish you a lot of luck with your historical museum.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very pleased you could be here, and I hope that the citizens of Buffalo take advantage of the opportunity to stop by, too.